So Facebook ran this study 2.5 years ago for a week in January. They included 689,003 users in the study, and reduced either the positive content in their newsfeed or the negative content in their newsfeed to see if it affected the moods of these users. And they judged this by whether they made positive posts or made negative posts. And the users didn't realize they were part of a psychological experiment, and we still don't know who those users were. For all I know, I could have been one of them. But we found out this happened because the researchers, one data scientist from Facebook, a researcher from Cornell, and a researcher from the University of California, published their study in an academic journal, and then we found out about it. And I thought it crossed a line that Facebook shouldn't be running psychological experiments on unsuspecting users without their consent. My colleague Jeff disagrees with me.
Well, I think Facebook is constantly running a big psychological experiment on its users. The without their consent part is also a little bit problematic, just because Facebook, as you pointed out, is covered. Technically, they're covered by the terms of service here. I think that Facebook's been around for 10 years now. We're all pretty sophisticated about the way that we keep finding out new things. If you've been a member of Facebook for any amount of time, you find out every few months that they're using your data in some new way. So here's a new way, not that new. They have been publishing and helping academics to publish studies all along of the way that their users behave. But yeah, I don't think that there's anything particularly new here. I think more than anything what people are finding alarming is the language that this is couched in. We're not used to hearing, when you hear Facebook manipulated people's emotions, that sounds really scary. If you hear Facebook showed people certain types of content to see if they would respond with similar types of content, that doesn't sound very scary.
But I think it's different from the normal A/B testing that we see happening at these companies. I'm very used to the fact that news organizations will show you 2 different versions of their headline to see which one you're more likely to click on, or that Facebook wants us to be clicking and sharing and reading more, and that they're showing us different content to do that. But what I think makes this distinct is that they were really entering that realm of emotions and mood and basically trying to make people have a happier day or a crappier day and measuring it for a scientific
I think another
study.
issue is the A/B testing analogy is that you kind of associate that with small startups who are trying to grow. And Facebook's at this point now where it's so big, it's got more than 1 billion active users. It almost doesn't even need to worry about that anymore. It's like a utility. And so it almost has this extra layer of responsibility now in terms of how people are using the platform for social reasons and whatnot.
But that's what's so fascinating is that the reason they did this study is, like, one, they want to see people more engaged with Facebook. They're worried, I think, about people going away or moving on to the next exciting startup. So they're trying to figure out if we throw more emotional content at people, what happens. And one of the things the study mentioned is that when they took emotional content out, people they saw a withdrawal effect. So I think I see ways that Facebook is going to use this in their business. I just think it's that people that are becoming guinea pigs in psychological experiments should know about it and be able to opt into that.
So I think it's important to step back here and say that one of the researchers said he basically responded to all the outcry on Facebook with a post. And he said, part of the reason we wanted to do this is there was this idea that came from researchers outside Facebook that there's a thing that's been called Facebook envy, a phenomenon where people see all the happy pictures and braggy updates in Facebook, and it makes them feel bad about themselves. People even would say it causes depression among people. And so this data scientist from Facebook said we wanted to examine whether this is true or not. Mm-hmm. And I think Facebook didn't start that. Facebook did not start that discussion. B, it's a very legitimate thing for them to want to quantify, and they have an important business. It's a business imperative for them to know whether that's in fact true. It didn't turn out to be true.
But that's what's so kind of odd about this kind of combination of a scientific endeavor trying to answer that question, which is very much, very much a lot of people can relate to that, and wrapping that into the motivations of a larger corporation, which not only can monitor all that but can tinker with it as well. to the effect that it can, encourage usage, which affects its bottom line.
But I think the problem is, yes, I think that's a worthy thing to study. I think it's super interesting. I totally understand why they'd want to study it, but I do think it's a psychological study where you're finding out whether people get depressed or don't get depressed because of what they see on Facebook. And that, he actually collaborated with academic researchers who usually, when you're doing a test on human subjects, you go to an institutional review board, an ethics board, who says this is okay. And we created those in the US in the 1970s because there were too many creepy experiments that were being run on people, like putting a person in a room and telling them they were shocking someone else to death. And we decided, people were going too far in what they were doing to their subjects. Facebook doesn't have to go through an IRB, it only is going through an internal process. In this case, they actually collaborated with academics, and it's kind of crazy to me that this actually made it through the academic process and got approved.
Well, if the academics that collaborated with Facebook didn't observe the protocols that they're required to, that's an issue for them. It's not an issue for Facebook. It doesn't have the same kind of responsibility that an academic research institution would have.
So this got actually reviewed inside Facebook, but it didn't in terms of the process of the analysis and how Facebook ended up using that data to change the algorithm for news feeds to affect reactions and behavior. Was that okayed by the academics in their review boards? That part, I wonder if they would have okayed that.
Yeah, I don't think the review board was looking at it at that extent. They were just looking at whether academics could analyze this data that was already there. I don't know. For me, what it comes down to is that when I go on Facebook, I expect that I'm being watched, that researchers are probably looking at who I'm looking at, what I'm clicking on, how much time I spend looking at an ex's profile or some photos from someone's vacation, and I'm fine with them collecting that data and analyzing it. What I don't like is the idea that I'm going to go to Facebook and then, without knowing it, be part of some psychological experiment. This time, I think it was fairly innocuous in terms of the effect on people's mood, but some people have pointed out that if you're clinically depressed and you were going to Facebook in this week in January after Christmas, you've got the holiday blues, and you're only seeing negative content, and that could really affect your real world
Well, the other thing
experience.
is, if you think about the timing of this was like back
You're
in January.
I can see.
That was a major eye roll. Sorry about that.
This is back in January 2012, and we know about this now, 2 years later. What have they been doing since then? Who knows what other kinds of experiments have been run?
And this is where I have to give Facebook credit. Like, I'm happy that they published this, that we know about it, that we can talk about it, but I think we do need to talk about this. What are the standards that we expect from tech companies who have lots of information about us, control the kind of information we're exposed to, and now want to take it a step further and start running experiments on us?
So I think there are a couple of points there that I wanted to respond to. One is, who knows what other kinds of experiments they run? We know, because they do publish these and they don't get attention. I mean, they published this one 2 weeks ago. Nobody was talking about it until somebody kind of figured out how to put the right, urgent spin on it. Not to say alarmist spin on it, some of us would say that. But they published the same data scientist at Facebook published another study last year looking at how users self-censor when they type in updates and then don't publish them, which, first of all, I think an average user would not necessarily assume that Facebook can see what you type in but decide not to publish. That is, to me, that's a much more alarming invasion of privacy. And
Facebook had told me, I asked them about that study when it happened, and they said the only time we ever collected it is when we're doing this experiment. But
I think people are more concerned by the fact that Facebook can control what's in your news feed and actually affect the emotionally driven behavior that you would exhibit on your feed.
Okay, yes,
rather than just the monitoring.
The emotionally driven, that is a big inference, and actually that's a mistake I think Facebook made both in presenting the science of this and in their PR strategy around presenting this. When they say emotionally driven behavior, all we know is that people are responding to posts with certain types of language that have been labeled as negative or positive with the same flavor of language, negative or positive. Now, we don't know if that's because it makes you feel sad and then you write a sad post in response, or if because you're doing the socially appropriate thing. You are just mirroring what else is going on.
All my friends,
if you're at a party and people are talking quietly, you're going to talk quietly. That doesn't mean that you've been put in a quiet mood. It means that you're being socially appropriate.
If all my friends are saying, my life sucks, like I lost my job, the airline screwed me over, and I was like, ooh, I just got a promotion, it doesn't really fit in the whole emotional tenor of what you're saying. So it may just be bowing to emotional peer pressure.
So we're actually all very empathetic people, which is great. That's what Facebook proves.
Or herd animals would be the other way to put it.
Right. So okay, let's come to our takeaways. I think that Facebook, so I signed up for 23andMe, which is this service you can use for genetic analysis, and I spit, in a tube and send them my saliva so that they can tell me about my ethnicity and any diseases I might have. And they had a box that I checked that said whether I wanted to be part of 23andMe, which would allow my genetic material to be part of academic studies. And I checked that box and said I'm fine with it. I feel like Facebook should have that same option, that it should query users about whether they want to be part of these studies, and that Facebook should tell somebody afterwards that they were part of a study. I think that is important.
You have to expect that there was someone in Facebook when they were doing these studies suggesting that. I mean, there must have been discussions in the company about doing that, but it just didn't happen.
So,
Jeff, what do you think moving forward? What do you want from Facebook? You're fine with it? Just leave it how it is?
If Facebook is going to publish their data in the form of academic studies or turn it into academic studies, yes, they should meet academic standards, which is basically what you're saying. I think that the much bigger story, the bulk of the stuff that Facebook is doing in this regard is basically corporate research. I think we're almost never going to know what they're actually doing. If you want to be scared about something, I think you can be scared about that. I think the idea that Facebook might look at data like this and say, oh, we've noticed when people post sad things, it causes their friends to check in on the site less often. Why don't we make it so it's harder to see sad things people post on Facebook? That would be a scary privacy scenario, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Though I think that's the lesson that they took away.
Yes, I don't think that's what people are getting. I don't think that's what people are getting freaked out here right now. People are getting freaked out that it is influencing their behavior. The question is, what's Facebook going to do in response to the behavior that we show it?
Which is weird, and influencing our behavior via the posts and content that's coming from our friends and family. It's not even content coming from them, it's from people we know, which is just, navigating that and changing that is what I find kind of odd.
Carmi, takeaways? You have to tell them too.
My takeaway is it just kind of emphasizes how powerful Facebook is in terms of being able to affect people's emotional state, potentially, right? Even if it's just to a small degree, that potential is there. And there was another study that was reported not long ago about how Facebook helped improve voter turnout in certain areas. So
in 2012 as well.
Right. So you can imagine the number of people who would want to influence that and get a little, political figures who might want to somehow find a way to take advantage of that to swing things like voter opinion. I mean, if more people on Facebook start voting, that means more younger people start voting, which is, good for potentially left-wing parties, you could say. So.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear from you in the comments on this. We'll be there. Sorry that we can't actually bring you live with us. And we're all on Twitter, and we've been talking about it there as well. So thanks for tuning in if you tuned in.